My name is Eleanor Ingersoll, and I lead the Queen Village Neighbors Association. But tonight, I am humbled to be representing more than 1,600 people who registered for this town hall. They want to learn how city leaders will prioritize the noise and safety issues around ATVs, dirt bikes, modified motorcycles, muscle cars, and slingshots. A month ago, we convened the first emergency multi-civic town hall, and tonight we'll review what action plans are being implemented, how success is being gauged, and how focus will be maintained through the summer and beyond. Participation tonight from across the city demonstrates the need for action. The groups that are standing together on this issue, 6 business districts and 32 neighborhoods, is up from the 23 registered at our last town hall. That's an increase of almost 50%. A map shows the location of registrants demonstrating hotspots in the east for Queen Village and Society Hill, north to Fishtown, Kensington, Old Kensington, and Gabbett, west to University City, Pelton Village, and Spruce Hill, and south all the way to Packer Park. This means that not a single district of the city's 10 legislative districts is untouched by this problem. And many registrants have reached out to at-large council people for help, as is shown here. Why the huge turnout tonight? Because there is palpable frustration and disbelief that their concerns are not being addressed. In talking to different people and civic leaders, I heard many horror stories of near misses and accidents, sleepless nights, destroyed property, and multiple smaller community meetings with some of the very same officials that have not amounted to action. So tonight, let's talk about action. We've invited the same panelists back with some additions. We have Deputy Police Commissioner Joel Dales, who leads the city's ATV details, Rich Montanez, Deputy Commissioner of the Streets Department, to discuss solutions like street closures and rerouting traffic. At-large Councilman Allan Domb, who submitted legislation to put the problematic wheels under more stringent seizure laws. City Councilman Mark Squilla, co-sponsor of that legislation and dedicated constituent advocate. And Councilman Derek Green at large, also a co-sponsor of the bill, who has a vested interest in increasing budget allocations to manage this problem. First Assistant District Attorney Robert Listenbee can answer questions about how the DA's office will specifically support prosecuting violators of the laws. Acting Commissioner of License and Inspections Ralph DiPietro to explain how L&I will follow up on reported sites housing illegal wheels. And Managing Director of the City of Philadelphia, which I hope will be joining us very soon, Tumar Alexander, to explain how the city will support these agencies to prioritize safer Philadelphia streets. Councilman Domb, I'd like to start with you. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Can you please explain the legislation you introduced shortly after the May 5th town hall? What loopholes does it rectify? What's the status of its passage? And when will it actually look to be enacted?
Well, thank you, Eleanor. And on behalf of my colleagues, I appreciate you keeping us accountable to the people we serve. And we hear you and we'll continue to hear you and we'll continue to fight for you. And I'm here also tonight to listen to the concerns of everyone on this call. And I'm also here to join you in a call for action. I think all my colleagues and myself realize the situation. We can't sit by and wait for more people to be seriously hurt by the action of those riders who are breaking the law. So let me give you the legislative update. Tomorrow in council, we'll be voting on a bill that council members Squilla and council members Green and myself introduced. It amends the traffic code to include dirt bikes and dune buggies as an illegal street vehicle in accordance with existing state law. This will help reinforce the police department's ability to confiscate these kinds of vehicles. I really want to thank also Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales, the police department, and the DA's office for their help with this legislation. We're also continuing to scan options for how we restrict fuel sales in a manner that doesn't punish the wrong people, specifically our gas station attendants. In addition to the legislative effort I just want to mention and the policing effort, we're also trying to find, if possible, an alternative space where riders can actually ride safely and where an outside, I'm going to repeat that, outside operator can build a business here and be part of this industry. In full disclosure, I will share with you that I do enjoy myself riding ATVs, but not on the streets of Philadelphia. I do it out west. And last week, Councilmember Squilla and I toured a potential site down by the airport. It's not a perfect spot, but it's away from any residential and commercial, and it's large. We had two of the riders from the community with us, and they were positive about its location and possibilities, but there was a lot of hurdles. And one is an environmental scan of the property, and we'll have to work with the government, federal government, who owns bordering land, to see if we can either buy, transition, or operate this space. That is to say, it's a long-term option, but we have to dedicate some time for this effort as well. So above everything else, we need to stand up for the safety of everyone and keep at this. So thank you, Eleanor. Thank you for having me here tonight, and we're here to help.
Thank you very much for that update. And it is reassuring that there's movement on the location, but as you did say, it could take a very long time to actually come to fruition. So to reiterate, in the meantime, the bill gets voted on tomorrow, the legislation gets voted on tomorrow?
Yes, it gets voted on tomorrow.
And very quickly through the steps, if it does, what other finalizations would it require before it could be enacted?
Well, the next step, if it passes tomorrow, which I believe it will, the mayor has to sign it into law. And then once he signs it into law, police department can enact it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Councilman. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we go to City Councilman Mark Squilla, again, also co-sponsor of your legislation. And we're hoping you can explain the amendment to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter that calls for the mandatory establishment and hiring of public safety enforcement officers.
Thank you, Eleanor. Yes, this was passed. It was actually co-sponsored and voted on by, co-sponsored by myself, but voted on by the public. This was supposed to go into place last year, but was set back a year because of COVID. This year, I reached out to administration, and they're looking to start. It was supposed to be with 40 public safety officers to start, but they're going to start with 20 public safety officers starting in July. We will hopefully be able to pilot them in different parts of the city to places where normally you wouldn't really need police, whether it was writing tickets or abandoning cars, or going to an area that had an accident, you need to divert traffic, quality of life issues as far as maybe trash or littering and other things. So this may be a perfect opportunity starting in July to see if we could pilot some of these officers in areas down where we're having some of our safety and quality of life concerns. Now, these officers, these ambassadors, do not have arresting powers. They would still have to work with the police, but they would have direct contact with those police in and around that area in case there is a problem that would need additional resources. But I'm happy to see that they are moving forward with this, and that maybe if Tumar Alexander does join later on, we could ask them about their deployment and support from the administration.
Can you specify which department would these public safety officers fall under, and thus who would be training them, and who would they answer to? And would they have movement to eventually support police in some hotspots? Not as officers, but as support for surrounding distractions.
Yes, the goal of these officers were really to maybe create a pipeline for the police department eventually. We saw that this is going to be under the managing director's office. So the budget for these quality of life ambassadors or officers will be under the managing director, and therefore it would be his authority to place them and put them in positions. Also, the administration would then write the regulations for what these officers can and cannot do. Our initial instance was to see them as a sort of a people who can go to certain locations where you wouldn't really need a police officer. And why detain police from doing their job when we could use these officers to offset that type of work? It'll probably be a work in progress. We'll probably have some challenges along the way to see how best use them. But the intent is to really deal with quality of life issues and safety issues that normally would not require police action.
Thank you very much, Councilman. That would be a relief if tickets could be drawn up for congregating spots and things parked on sidewalks and everything. That might be a step in the right direction to disperse growing tension where it might be. Thank you very much for that. And I will go now to Councilman Derek Green. Again, you also co-sponsored the bill referenced by Councilmans Domb and Squilla. And right now you're in the middle of the city budget, which must be finalized by June 30th. You've been hearing testimony about how funds should be dispersed. Can you explain what monies have been budgeted to this particular issue, whether it's listed under nuisance or which department or agency it might fall under to deal with these issues we've been discussing?
Thank you, Eleanor, for the invitation. And we're currently, as you stated, going through the budget process. Myself, council members Domb and Squilla are part of the budget working group. We are working to try to finalize the budget in the coming days. Currently, there's $2.6 million allocated based on my information for the detail. I know Deputy Commissioner Dales has been very involved and engaged in that, and we'll give some updates that he's been providing us on a weekly basis of what they've been able to do with that detail, which they're doing about twice a week. And it generally goes from March until December. That's allocated about $2.6 million. But in addition to that, we've also been doing some research on other types of technology. For example, we've talked about drone technology. I know one of the things, and seeing the information from Deputy Commissioner Dales, a lot of these riders are taking these vehicles to be stored at locations around the city. It's often in illegal locations. Not all, but some illegal locations. And so having that type of technology would also be helpful for the police department to provide pursuit. For example, the University of Pennsylvania in their public safety efforts do use drone technology at the University of Pennsylvania as a public safety feature to help provide and address that issue. And that's something we're looking at as well, and try to investigate how that could be used as part of this process. But I also want to thank all of you and all the people who are on this call, because this is not just a center city issue. This is an issue all around the city of Philadelphia. I know I was just listening to issues with ATVs just the other night in Mount Airy, coming up and down Mount Airy Avenue, and constituents complaining about this issue. So it's not just a center city issue, it's a citywide issue. And it's also not just an ATV and motorbike issue, because I've also heard from various constituents, those that live near Eakins Oval and other parts of the city, who are also concerned about the loud noise of modified mufflers on cars. And we've heard that from neighbors that live up and down Roosevelt Boulevard and all around the city of Philadelphia. And we've also been having those conversations with Deputy Commissioner Dales as well.
And I'm happy you brought that up, because I was saving it for Mr. Dales, but I will ask, so there's 2.6 dedicated to the ATV detail. Is that all encompassing? Is that just seizures? Is that includes the drones? Because, as you said, that the noise problem is extreme, and there are laws written about decibel levels, et cetera, but where's the equipment, the person who's trained on it, and therefore the enforcement of it?
Yeah, from my understanding, that's all encompassing from the detail for the police department. However, we also, and I see we've got our Allan commissioner here, we also should include the health department as well in reference to noise and sound, because there are other parts of the city that deal with those issues beyond just the police department from a public safety perspective. And so I think having this type of conversation and continuing the conversation to bring in other departments that have responsibility for different aspects of these issues, like licenses and inspection and others, help to provide a fuller approach to this issue. And there's other resources that we could tap into through those other departments to try to address these concerns, especially, for example, the health department. They deal with air management, and there are specific areas and locations where you're seeing certain sound and noise. We can work on that as well.
That would be welcome news because it's fortunate when there are ordinances, laws, things written in place, but there's not the backing support money to enforce them. And I really hope that Mr. Alexander is able to join us tonight to maybe clarify some of these things a little later. I am going to go to First Assistant District Attorney Robert Listenbee. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, sir. As I said, I've been talking to various people, to different civic groups, and I have to say that morale is very low for people enduring this relentless onslaught, be it in traffic, in noise, in rumbling, in disregard for traffic laws, in disregard for pedestrian safety. We can allude to the hit and run on Columbus Boulevard back in May. But their morale is low because they feel that police hands are tied in pursuing this problem and that the district attorney's office won't prosecute offenders, making it all an exercise in futility. Now, again, these people are voters who have put their faith in elected officials because they are invested in their city. Is their assumption correct? Is this an exercise in futility?
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me here this evening. The district attorney's office is very pleased to participate in this town hall and any others related to this issue. Let me give you a brief summary of some of the activities that have taken place since our last town hall, and I'll discuss one of the one arrest that's been brought to our attention where we followed through on it, and that person was taken into custody. So let me start off by saying our intelligence director, Chance Lee, has met with the Philadelphia Police Department leadership regarding potential enforcement, proposing charges of disorderly conduct, fleeing, which is a misdemeanor of the second degree, and recklessly endangering another person, another misdemeanor of the second degree, to be determined on a case-by-case basis with an emphasis on needing a listed victim to support the recklessly endangering another person charge. Where there are victims who are willing to come forth and testify, we will prosecute. I want to point out again that the intelligence director met with PPD to participate in 2 separate investigations relating to storage facilities and garages where dirt bikes and ATVs were believed to be stored. One location was cleared after a search. One investigation is currently pending. The intelligence director also met with Councilman Allan Domb and Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales for a meeting to ensure that we continue to collaborate, cooperate, and work together on all issues relating to this particular challenge. We have one specific case involving a case that occurred before our last meeting. That case occurred on the 9th of March of 2021, 100 South Broad Street. Complainant was driving north on South Broad when a group of 6 or 7 males on dirt bikes and ATVs pulled in front of him. The group abruptly braked, causing complainant witness to hit an ATV and pulled in front of him. Hit a defendant on a dirt bike. The defendant fell to the ground without any apparent injuries. The complainant got out of his vehicle to check on the defendant. The defendant got up and repeatedly punched the complainant in the face. Complainant retreated into his car and called 911. The defendant and other males began throwing garbage and then a cinder block and bricks from a construction site at the complainant's vehicle, breaking multiple windows, and then fled north on Broad Street. The assault was captured on video by other civilians. The video captured a defendant produced a gun and approached complaining witness's victim before others yelled to the defendant to let it go. The defendant then began throwing objects at the complainant's car. As a direct result of this incident, with videos, with witnesses and so forth, the defendant was arrested. He was charged with aggravated assault and related charges. And as a result, he was taken into custody and charged. Bail was set, and there has been a preliminary hearing, and this case has been held for court. As of, I believe, 3/13, I'm sorry, not 3/13, it has been held for court and is now in a court of common pleas. The next listed date is 8/9/21 for pretrial. So that is the one case that's been referred to us. If there are others, we will follow up on them. There are some instances where cases begin in one fashion. They might begin with an ATV or begin with a dirt bike, but then incidents occur that are not directly related to dirt bikes or ATVs. We do arrest folks on those charges as well, and we will charge them and follow up on those things. So we are tracking this. The one case that we have, I've asked that the supervisor of our major trials unit, especially assign it to an attorney who will handle it from beginning to end. And we will keep track of it and report back as this case goes through the system.
Mr. Listenbee, this is all excellent news to hear, and I thank you so much for being able to catalog everything that is going on. If you want the people on this town hall, which we're now up to almost 700, what is the takeaway? That what helps you do your job and neighbors to be proactive and feel like they're part of it? It's that if there is a victim, to come forward, if there is video,
Well,
to share it. Like how can people be productive and not complainers?
This is a difficult area of the law in that there is behavior. We have to make certain that there's criminal conduct involved in the behavior. If there is, then we are going to follow through. Once the police arrest somebody, we will follow through immediately. And we will certainly, I'll have it brought to my attention, and we'll certainly follow up on it directly. What we have is an area where the law has not been clear in certain areas. We know that we can bring forth disorderly conduct charges. We know we can bring forth fleeing charges and recklessly endangering under certain circumstances where there are victims. But these are so far we just have not had a lot of cases. I think I want to stress something that was discussed earlier. That is a focus on prevention. If there are things that we can do here at the district attorney's office to support efforts for prevention, we're definitely on board, because the solution may not just be enforcement. We're strongly in favor of doing that, and we will follow through. But if there's some preventive efforts, we also would like to be involved in those as well. We like the idea we heard about possibly opening some sort of park out near the airport, but we recognize from the very beginning here that is not the total solution. There is a lot. There's my sense, at least, that the dirt bike culture involves sort of disobeying current traffic laws and sort of going around on the streets and sidewalks. That is the culture. We need to find a way to get to the heart of that culture and find ways of breaking it. I think even if we open up a beautiful park with all kinds of resources there, that might not be the total solution. So we got to keep working and find some other solutions that might help us in this area. And we will continue to work with city council representatives and members, and also with the Philadelphia Police Department whenever we're asked. And we will assign other staff to this issue as requested by folks who want to work on it.
Well, that is very good to hear, because I would be very interested in hearing prevention ideas and programs, and any way that civics can work together with you. I've spoken to Lamar Stewart very many times. It would be a pleasure to see what deterrent programs we can work with, and maybe start a pilot that could be spread throughout the city. So we can, I look forward to talking about that offline, unless there's something off the top of your head that you think would be an appropriate time to mention a potential program.
I don't know of potential programs. I've heard of programs in New York City, and we've begun to at least talk to folks there. I've heard of programs in Baltimore, but let's get real concrete quickly, and let's see if we can find even programs that are new, that may not have a long track record. We're willing to work with folks and try something that might help here. The fear I have, and that most of the folks on this call and on the previous call have, is that we're just going to have one of these really sad accidents where somebody gets killed. And we're going to be looking back upon this saying that, if only we could have done more and we could have moved faster. Because we know that riding these dirt bikes, and I used to be a biker myself, so I understand, some of the logistics involved. I understand some of the risk involved. It doesn't take a lot to have a crash with a dirt bike or with an ATV that could be deadly. So I want to move as swiftly as others want to move, and be involved in whatever level that folks think that they would like to have the district attorney's office involved, so that we can be involved in investigations and do the enforcement. But if there's some good prevention stuff, please bring it to our doorstep as well.
We will remember that, and we will do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Listenbee.
You're welcome.
I'm just checking if Mr. Alexander has been able to join us yet, and I don't believe so. So I will move along then to Deputy Commissioner Joel Dales, head of the ATV detail for the city of Philadelphia. There have been many comments and emails and calls about what police should do, what they should try, how they could think outside of the box. I know you've heard everything probably in triplicate, but I'm curious to hear from you a couple of things, how the ATV details are going and the confiscation rates, how monitoring hotspots has worked. I've got a couple more for you, but I'll let you start with that if you would, please, sir.
Sure. Thanks again for the invitation. Can you hear me? Thanks again for the invitation. Just to give you an update on the confiscations. The total confiscations for the ATV detail alone was 247 year to date. For the year as a whole, outside of the ATV detail, we also confiscated 100 vehicles. So that brings the total to 347. And this been up and the detail's been up and running since March. And again, since last year, we confiscated a total of 410 vehicles. So as of now, we're at 347 and the year is almost not, it's halfway through. So we have a lot of work to do moving forward. In reference to some of the things that we have done since our last meeting, we have enhanced the motor vehicle code enforcement, as well as tickets for the loud noise and music along the South Street corridor. South Broad Street corridor, I'm sorry. Also we also implemented a rapid response team, which consists of multiple officers and the supervisor who responds to large gatherings of ATVs, slingshots, you name it, any large gathering of motor vehicles. These officers will respond to clear those areas out, to disperse those groups. Citywide, I'm listening to some of the comments made by my colleagues here on the call. A lot of the large gatherings are occurring across the city. So as you know, we're very busy, not only with the ATV details, we're also dealing with the boom cars, the drag racers, the large car gatherings across the city. So I increased the staffing level in reference to that detail as well. They are doing a great job dispersing groups, but again, they're really busy during the weekend. Most of the gatherings are occurring in East Division and Southwest Division. So we have beefed up patrol within those zones as well. In reference to the cameras we talked about, I I've reached out to our Delaware Valley Intelligence Center, and I approved the posting of cameras at key positions throughout the city. I will share one location with the group here. One will be at the Speedway gas station along Broad Street. So that way we can monitor that gas station. So when we see ATVs, dirt bikes, or whatever gathering at the location, then we'll pretty much take action at the location. But we also have other locations throughout the city where we will be posting these cameras. In reference to the drones, we are limited to as in reference to how we can use those drones. We can't use the drones like we use our helicopter because of the distance. And also the operator must have full view of that drone at all times. So these ATVs and dirt bike riders, they don't stay put. They travel long distances before we can actually confiscate those vehicles. So we can use the drones for limited usage, such as surveillances, which Councilman Green mentioned. We can use it for that. But overall, that's pretty much what we've done thus far. We are going to continue to focus on the enforcement portion of it. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those questions.
Yes, I did want to check in with you. Some of the ideas people gave, I did see a lot of comments prior to this from the registrants that even the most minimal police deterrent, be it on the apron of the museum or at the Speedway on Broad Street, has really helped in quelling it. But the second the cars go, and we understand that there's you're strapped in some regard, but as soon as they go, then it starts again. And it's as you come off of Kelly Drive and you stop just before the art museum, if you catch that red light and it says the museum district, and Benjamin Franklin Parkway is now replete with, world famous museums, and the Rocky statue is the second most visited site in Philadelphia behind the Liberty Bell. It is boggling to most that if the care for the residents isn't in place, then at least for the tourists who are going to come there, who want to take advantage of the city and whose dollars the city needs. Another reason why I'm disappointed we do not have the managing director here with us tonight, but the question is, is it a matter of manpower or budget to be able to do more long-term monitoring where the cameras may not help, or a car is more efficient in dealing with these things?
It's a combination of both. Don't forget, I stress this every time we meet. First and foremost, gun violence is most important. We have to cover down our problematic crime areas. So that's the most important areas that we have to maintain police presence. We don't have as many police officers as we had in the past. We have officers retiring. And we're still waiting to start a class at the academy. So we're doing the best we can with what we have. We have 2 details in place, which I talked about, those large car gatherings across the city. If you can see the number of these cars, how many cars are showing up at one location, especially Aramingo Avenue, and those of you who are on this call who lives in that area, you can share with the folks what you see on the week or every weekend. Over 1,000 vehicles show up at these locations, a mixture of cars, ATVs, and dirt bikes. So we're stretched thin, and we're trying our hardest to police all these things. And on top of that, they want the police to do other things outside of crime fighting. So we are trying our best to continue to focus on the issues with the ATVs and dirt bikes.
Well, hopefully the managing director's office will put the fast forward go ahead for the public safety officers to not only augment what you're trying to do in the less dangerous situations, but provide that pipeline that Councilman Squilla referred to. We might come back to you, but thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner. I appreciate
Eleanor,
it.
could I ask a quick question?
Please do.
Deputy Commissioner Dales, you talked about the rapid response network and team. If constituents want to report locations, how would they do that?
So I know we had an issue with the 911 situation, so we are working on that. We have dispatchers in class this month, which already started, I believe it was June 1st. We also have another class going in August. So we're trying to work out that situation. So again, we were short all the way around. So with that, outside of that, I'll recommend that folks continue to use our tip line. I'm receiving a lot of tips, which is very helpful. So we are utilizing that. And also get to know your captains in your respective districts, wherever you live. You live in that particular district, get to know your captains, get their emails, send them an email, let them know there are large gatherings at a certain location. So that way they can actually address it, especially in Center City and South Division. Those are the ones who are really, really focused on the rapid response teams that they have in place, because the majority of these riders are gathering as far as dirt bikes and ATVs, slingshots, things of that nature. They're gathering along the South Street corridor. So they have their rapid response team in place, and they have been pretty much dispersing these large groups that have been gathering along that corridor. So that's what I recommend. Emails, continue to call 911. If you're still having an issue where they're not answering 911, don't hang up, stay on the line. I'm hearing that the longest delay has been up to like 30 seconds, I think, something to that effect, but do not hang up. But in the meantime, like I said, continue to send tips using our tip line, 215-686-TIPS. You can either text a message or call that in, or go to our website, phillypolice.com, and submit a tip based on what you're seeing in your community.
Thank you so much, Deputy Dales. I'm catching some flickering of the chats, and it's well understood that we can't please all the people all of the time. But I'm very grateful for all of you to showing up tonight, being transparent, and asking the questions, because this is not going to happen in a day. And it's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up, Councilman Green and Commissioner Dales, that get to know your police captains. We do here. It's been incredibly helpful, but there are other avenues to approach, and everybody's got to be proactive. So again, thank you, Commissioner Dales. I'm going to ask now Rich Montanez, Deputy Commissioner of the Streets Department. How is it going with rerouting traffic, managing the traffic that's been rerouted from street closures? Because as I've come to understand, the speed cushions are becoming less of an operable deterrent.
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah, we are currently working with a lot of the restaurants to see if we could expand their, for lack of a better word, their streetery frontage during the spring and summer to help them also recover from the pandemic. So as such, we're going to be doing some more street closures, block closures, as South Street has done, Midtown Village has done, Rittenhouse Square has done, and now Old City is doing. There's a couple other communities that have expressed interest in this. And so the city, we're actively working with them to see how we can help them out and accomplish these goals. We've also been working in Juniata and Eastwick with new measures to try to deter drag racing. I did a walkthrough through the Eastwick neighborhood last week, and they seem to like what the city has done. We are going to continue to expand those pilots as we're able to do. I'm like to say I was doing it this week, but unfortunately I'm 2.5 days picking up trash. So I have everybody in the streets department picking up trash and not doing their regular work.
So would you say the street closures have been a success? Again, knowing that not everybody can be pleased all the time, but as far as deterrence, is again, it's that right now, or speed cushions when you talk about an immediate response as far as streets concerned, am I right?
So, I mean, street closures are easier for us to do. We can do them a lot quicker. There's currently a 250 speed cushion backlog for the city of Philadelphia that we need to install. So there is a backlog that we're trying to get to it. It is taking us a while. We are going to be using some capital funds to bring in contractors to assist us to do this. This is a bid, and when the new budget gets allocated to the streets department, we will be doing some of those that way. But it is a backlog. It's taking us a while, and we're trying to address all the issues to us.
Lastly, if you had the option, how could streets work, even though it's under the managing director's office, how could streets work with the potential public safety officers? How could they help you if they could at all?
Well, we're waiting for the program to start. And again, we're probably going to end up meeting with them. They could probably be another way for the community to tell us what's happening. We'll be listening to them. We currently deal with the public affairs officers on a daily basis that the police has in every district. And those are who tell us what the community feels like. So we plan to work with them on a daily basis.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Montanez. And now I'm going to go to the Acting Commissioner of License and Inspections, Ralph DiPietro. Mr. DiPietro, how can you explain how L&I will follow up on reports of sites housing or fixing these illegal wheels? I know that Mr. Listenbee did reference following up on one of those sites.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the one way in which Allan and I can sort of participate in this. We would sort of look at this from a zoning perspective because it's really the only tool we have. If these garages typically are housing ATVs, dirt bikes, that sort of stuff, that's typically not permitted. It's against the zoning code. Now we could we encourage folks to call 311 and register complaints. I know that can be frustrating, but it's really important, and I'll tell you why. When we go to the court, eventually when we cite these sorts of properties and we have to defend it either on appeal or at the court, one of the things they're going to ask is, was this a public nuisance? And if we can't produce a complaint list, people actually affected by it, it's very likely they're going to get all kinds of continuances from the court, or in many cases, get a very small fine. So one thing I think that Ellen and I can do is go after the properties where they're housed. Now, I think it needs a little bit more coordination. The typical 311 complaints, which are necessary and good to do and important to our enforcement, that may not be the best way to route these. I'm thinking perhaps a more one-on-one with our district supervisors so that they're aware of the particular properties. Because one of the things that we find that can be difficult with these, it's not always apparent that what they're doing. We show up, it's a garage, right? Doors are down, the owners aren't letting us in. So it's helpful to have some dialogue with community members, civic associations, neighbors, anything like that that can help us assemble the information and the evidence necessary to take an action. Now, of course, this action is against the property owner. It's not necessarily, it doesn't affect the folks driving dirt bikes or stuff like that, or ATVs, but it's a way to take away the harborage, like a place where they can operate out of And sometimes that's helpful. Oftentimes they'll find a different location to go, but at least as you dry up those places, there's less and less options available. And property owners, quite frankly, they can't claim ignorance. If you're renting your garage to a bunch, you know what that's doing in the neighborhood, and you don't have to live in the city very long to see what these things are doing on the street. So they're not completely without blame. They need to know, and we have to hold them accountable.
And we had here in Queen Village just a few weeks ago a kind of perfect storm, because we did develop a nuisance reporting tool for alcohol licensed businesses that also does a direct email to L&I, because it is and there is no, this is a neighborhood sentiment. There is no direct correlation, but a nuisance site that has been written up many times by neighbors, so it's been delivered through our reporting tool, was just a couple of 100 feet, maybe 200 feet from a murder. So and multiple congregations of illegal vehicles. So it's tough for neighbors here and probably across the city to not see how it's imperative that all of these city agencies work together, because it is a big net, and usually these things are combined. So the question is, if a place is reported, like the gentleman that we heard, and maybe this is the one you were referring to, Mr. Listenbee, the gentleman in Fishtown who reported the garage multiple times, and it took 8 months to shut it down before it was reopened shortly thereafter. Is it a manpower issue that needs to be addressed? Are there enough inspectors there? I think it's a response time that people are wondering about.
Yeah, I can say this is going to seem somewhat unusual, but it's not a resource issue for L&I. It's the process issue. The process is very long. And what's worse about this is they could get legalized. That's why you sort of have to be careful. L&I isn't made up like a sort of a criminal. We don't, we do all civil law. And the danger in that is you could wind up legalizing these places. That would be a catastrophe. Creating a license, for example, you would actually be licensed this sort of stuff. So the zoning process is sort of designed to say, look, you can't use it for this. There's a hearing and appeal process that runs corollary to that. It's very likely that they may not get zoning, especially if there's large neighborhood opposition, but still it's a long process. And there's all these sorts of appeals. Nuisance businesses is a little bit different. But I mean, because there's an actual business, there's a license that they could lose, a food license, a special assembly license, whatever it may be. With these sorts of places, really all they have is zoning. And once they get it, they got it. So it's L&I sort of one part of a multi-pronged approach. I think it makes sense to do a little bit more sort of outreach to talk to the organizations such as your own. Maybe if we could have a single person act as a conduit to send us the addresses. I'm happy to take this on. I'm happy to do the inspections. We can do that. The process can be long. We're going to need to work with our other partners in various agencies. We have to be careful that we don't interfere in an ongoing investigation, police or otherwise. That's a very real possibility. But if we can get a single conduit from the organization to sort of send us these addresses, and whatever information you have, we'll absolutely put inspectors on. We have resources to do this.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. DiPietro. And we only have about 10 minutes left. And if we had, we have board member Kate Allan on here. If there are any chats that you'd like to share with the panelists. And I think she might be muted. But if not, I wanted to ask very specifically in the legislation that we will hopefully be passed tomorrow, council people. What loopholes can the public expect to be tightened up specifically?
I think that's actually a better answer by Commissioner Dales, because he's the one who recommended the legislation. So I would defer to Deputy Commissioner Dales. This really came from the police department. We're just making it happen for them.
Right. So in reference, you're talking about the dirt bikes, correct?
Mm-hmm. Or is that licensing, which things can be returned quickly, which cannot, which will be destroyed?
Right. So by adding the dirt bikes to the city ordinance, it makes it a lot easier for police to confiscate these dirt bikes because we have a lot of dirt bikes on the street, more than ATVs. And they're getting the dirt bikes back a lot faster. For example, I can tell you how many vehicles were returned year to date in reference to dirt bikes and ATVs. So far, the 12 ATVs were returned to the owners. And usually the case is that their ATV were stolen and they came to reclaim their ATVs, but they had to prove that the ATV was stolen. So they were returned to the owner. Dirt bikes, 47 so far year to date. So that's what we're looking at in reference to ATVs being returned to the owners. We still able to hold on to some and destroy them. We will be doing something a little different moving forward, and I'll share that later on down the line, what we plan to do with that. But the actual ordinance will help us out tremendously because again, it's a different dynamic as to how we confiscate ATVs versus dirt bikes. ATVs, if we confiscate your ATV, you're going to receive a $2,000 ticket that you must pay. If you're going to try to get it back, and you must go through a hearing through the Office of Administrative Review. They will decide whether or not you get your ATV back. Usually it's no, usually they allow us to destroy those ATVs. Now dirt bikes on the other hand is a different story. And again, I'm not going to educate those who are on this line who are ATV and dirt bike riders, but I will just let the public know that it is a lot easier to get your dirt bikes back.
Until this legislation is passed.
Exactly. Once this legislation is passed, it will fall under the same guidelines as ATV, $2,000 ticket, going through a hearing of the Office of Administrative Review, and then they'll decide whether or not they get their vehicle back. And most likely they'll probably give us the okay to destroy it.
One last question for you about the muscle cars and the gathering. If one of the problems with them are the modified exhausts, which are illegal, what would be, in a nutshell, the best way to be able to ticket, seize, whatever the case is? Because I do believe we did receive an email today about there is a special emissions sticker that should be attached as part of the registration.
So just to let you know, in reference to these muscle cars, drag racers, drag racing vehicles, boom cars, these large car gatherings, we have confiscated several cars. And that fall under the livestock program. So we have confiscated vehicles and we issued a lot of tickets. So we have been issuing tickets in reference to these gatherings. So I will say that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, again, I know that many of you only have a, there just a few minutes left. And I guess a lot of people are wanting to hear more concrete action. And I'm going to quickly, if you will allow me, and I'm going to say, Kate, if there's particular issues that people would like to hear more detail from, if you could let me know, because I am behind on about 99 chats.
Sure. So there are several issues in the comments. So for the couple of minutes that we have left, one question I don't think we touched upon was about the use of livestock checkpoints being used more aggressively, especially on corridors like South Street.
So the livestock checkpoints, we don't have livestock checkpoints. They probably talk about our DUI checkpoints. And we are planning to implement that in the very near future as far as the DUI checkpoints. We enforce the livestock program across the city. So that's an everyday thing that we do. But I believe they're talking about the DUI checkpoints, if I'm not mistaken.
Was there another issue, Kate?
A lot of, well, there's lots of issues that are in the comments. Something about the drag racing on areas, particularly Columbus Boulevard, where a pedestrian was struck and killed last month by somebody who was drag racing. So what can you do to specifically address this dangerous situation?
So in reference to that situation, that was not an organized drag racing gathering. That was an impromptu drag racing incident that occurred. It is being investigated. We are looking to see if we can charge folks involved in that incident. But again, it's an active investigation as we speak. But in reference to that location, is not an area where you have these drag racers drag racing along down Columbus Boulevard consistently. But there are, don't get me wrong, it happens. But most of the places where they're drag racing is in other parts of the city. But they do it on Columbus Boulevard. And we do have a police presence along the Columbus Boulevard.
I want to ask one last question because it seems there are, if we're to revisit this again, it might be time to talk to state representatives. Is because are there PA laws that could be enacted that could help what we need to accomplish more, or would their help just be along state and federal roads?
Eleanor, I can jump in on that question.
Thank
I
you.
also serve as president of the Pennsylvania Municipal League, and we actually had a call today. And I know in some of the other cities around the Commonwealth, this ATV issue has been a concern. There's also been a concern in other cities that we've talked about, not only on this call, but in previous calls. I will reach out to our legislative director, Amy Sturgis, about that issue regarding, state laws that deal with ATVs and motorbikes, to see if we've done any work in the past on that issue, and what additional steps we could possibly do going forward. Because I have heard from mayors, council members, and other cities around the Commonwealth, this is also an issue as well.
Absolutely, because it seems like we need to take it to the next level and devise our own plans, or see what we can adopt and modify from other cities. Because again, there are people who are incredibly, as I said, stressed, crestfallen, disgusted with the quality of life and the serious safety issues that are being, as we showed in our map, dotting all over the city. So I do look forward to speaking with you all again, maybe even more specifically pointed topics that we can start to affect more direct action plans. Because I will say that in summary, we did get a lot of feedback from Dales and the money being allocated to the police to up their efforts with the ATV detail, that the council people working on passing legislation. And now I know Councilman Green, we're going to talk more with with state opportunities to curb this problem. We now know that it's a process with license and inspections, data, and I glanced down and saw people saying it was pointless to call 911. It's never pointless, because the bottom line is these things are all logged. And if you need to go and retrieve them to present for a court case, then you have them there. So if it's the one piece that you can do to try to help our elected officials follow things through, let's do it. And it was great talking to you, Mr. Listenbee. It's nice to hear the proactive stance and the openness to continue to work on other solutions from the DA's office. I'm terribly sorry to everybody who was hoping the mayor would be here. I have not gotten a response. If anybody can, we'd love to have him on one of these. I wish Tumar Alexander of the Managing Director's Office would have been able to join us to shed some light on these things. But again, we tried. And Rich Montanez, I know you're always open to solutions, and we'll continue to work with you to try to keep people who are pro closed streets and people that want to try other options. And again, it takes a village, it takes a city. I want to thank all of our participants for coming tonight. Again, Commissioner Dales, Deputy Commissioner Montanez, Councilman Domb, Councilman Squilla, Councilman Green, First District Attorney Robert Listenbee, Acting Commissioner of Licenses Inspections, Ralph DiPietro, and Tumar, we thank you if you were here. I look forward to convening again. I look forward, and I'm very, very humbled to have been able to stand up for all the people that signed up and participated in the Zoom. We are going to make the recording available as soon as possible. And on behalf of QVNA, it was a pleasure to represent all of the fellow neighbors across the city as we stand together for safer streets in Philadelphia. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you,
Thank
Eleanor.
you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot more work to do.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.